Good evening. I'd like to call the Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, November 14th, 2018 to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mrs. Witkowski,
She's on her way.
on her way, okay. Mr. Gamble.
Here.
Mrs. Evans.
Here.
Mrs. Larson.
Here.
Mr. Nielsen is excused, Mr. Lewis is excused, and I am here.
Thank you. We have a quorum, and the meeting has been properly posted. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3 is approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Gamble. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Larson. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 and 3 absent. Okay. Item 4 is community comment. Would anyone in the audience like to make community comment? Any comment? Okay. Hi. Welcome, and please sign in and also state your name and address for the record.
Is this on or not?
It-
Thank you. My name is Dana Gint. I live at 9011 West Hawthorne Lane in Franklin, of course. And I just had a couple questions about the new middle school programs. The presentation on March 9th by the middle school references articles by the Hanover Research. And I was wondering if those articles were available for public review. And also, the presentation also references that there was a comparison done with other schools that are led by a house which has 2 teachers as the lead. And I was wondering what those other schools are, if they're comparable socioeconomically to ours, and if they're public schools, and what their classroom size are, just to see if the matrix is similar. And what was the scoring or ranking that motivated you to make this change? Because I understand it was that you did a comparison and you were trying to improve. I don't know if it was by test scores or what. I'd like to know what was your comparison? Like, was it a test score? Was it some other matrix? And then regarding the courses, is there still going to be a STEM Core Plus program for the advanced or excelled students? And how is that going to be structured? Because I understand from the presentation that you're trying to limit the number of transitions that the students have, which I'm guessing means you're trying to limit the amount of time they move around from class to class. So, will the math teacher that's now required to teach science, will she teach science in the math classroom to limit the number of times the children move around the school? So that's one of my questions. And then what is the plan to educate the gifted and advanced students in this new format? If it's a house led by 2 teachers, will the gifted students all be clustered in one house? And how will the different grades, if the bells are at different times, how, if a 6th grader is in advanced math and needs to go to 8th grade math, how will that be accommodated? Because the time frame will not allow, because the time periods, from what I understand from the presentation, will be different. And then the presentation also mentioned reducing the number of transitions. Oh, that was the science lab one. Okay. I guess that's all the questions I have. I just had questions trying to understand this whole advancement, supposedly for the middle school. Thank you.
Your question, are you staying for the whole meeting?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Your question about the course?
Yeah.
May be answered
Okay.
later
For
during
the STEM course,
during our
the STEM Core
courses.
Plus?
As far as your other questions, Mr. Reuter, he can give you a call
Okay.
regarding some of those questions.
Okay.
He has your number.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
So thank you for your questions. Okay. Is there any other community comment? Any other comment? Okay, hearing none. Then I'll note that Mrs. Witkowski arrived at 6:05. And we'll move on to the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda? Oh, would any board member like to remove anything from the consent agenda?
Yes,
Okay, what item?
with donations.
Okay, so we're removing item D, 5D, the gifts. So do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda items 5A, B, and C?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Larson, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gamble. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then we'll consider item 5D. Mrs. Witkowski.
Yes, I just had a question about, I don't have it in front of me, but the donation for the school supplies.
Correct.
Why, I would expect that they would be included in our regular budget. so-
Right, right. So what you're referring to is the gift of $2,500 from Victory of the Lamb Church to Country Dale School. And while it does say school supplies, these are not just basic supplies that the district provides to students. These are things that are above and beyond perhaps what we would purchase for students. Some examples might be that teachers use this money to buy some fancier name tags for students, or borders for bulletin boards, or charts that they want for their classroom, things that might be more of a luxury for the district to buy, that the teacher would buy for their classroom. So it's not the basic supplies, it's not tape or paper or things that are necessary for the curriculum. They're those extra things. And it's also very common that our parent-teacher organizations provide this money to our teachers as well, to buy those little extras for our kids.
Okay, and so then this shows up as a donation because it's of the amount of it then? Because, like you said, PTOs
Yes.
do that,
Yeah,
but.
per our
okay.
policy,
Okay,
correct.
all right.
Mhm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, then I'm looking for a motion to approve item 5D on the consent agenda, gifts. Do I hear that motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Witkowski, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gamble. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 6 is school board announcements. Do we have any announcements today?
Just want to announce that the Education Foundation's main event is happening this Saturday. It's their auction event, and they still have tickets available, so, and they would appreciate anybody attending or participating any way they can.
Thank you. Any other announcements? All right, thank you. Item 7 is school board calendar. 7A, we have a regular Board of Education meeting on Wednesday, December 12th, 2018, here at the Education and Community Center at 6 o'clock p.m., and a regular Board of Education meeting Wednesday, January 9th, 2019, here at the ECC at 6 o'clock p.m. Item 8, reports, presentations, and other school board business. 8A, we have a Robinwood Elementary School presentation. Mr. Nelson. And students,
So I'll introduce my helpers here. So we have Julia Gardapi,
hi Julia.
Brennan Grant,
Hi Brennan.
and Avi Galani.
Hi Avi. Welcome.
So I'm going to present a little bit up here, and we're going to present, I know it was brought up last time about a resident artist, and someone, I believe it was, you Kenneth had observed a resident artist at Pleasant View.
And I did, and so did Miss, we
Yes,
both did.
we both
yes.
did.
So we're
It's
going
fun.
to talk a little bit more in detail about what that experience is, and we're going So we had Marina Lee come to our building this year. She is our artist in residence at Robinwood. First, I want to say thank you to Mrs. Valens. She was unable to make it tonight, but she did a lot of the groundwork in getting Marina Lee to come to our building. And also, I want to thank the PTO as they provided the funding through fundraising through Robinwood Rush to bring Marina Lee as well. I'm going to get into a little bit more detail later in what the kids are actually doing with her as we work through this process, but basically, thank you. But basically, all students are involved in creating art projects for the school that will be lasting in our building. And you'll kind of get to see a little bit of what those look like in a minute here. So when we looked at the values, we talked about the value of equity because every student, regardless of who they are, what their ability is, what their skill level is, every student takes a part in creating this artwork and has a role to play. So every single student at Robinwood has already begun part of the planning and part of the process for making this artwork. And we also talked about well-being as one of our values. As the students here will describe, our focus was building community and kindness through the vision, and the vision will come out into the art. So as they were planning and we were going through this process, it was always what's the student's vision of community and kindness, and then that's going to be displayed in the artwork. So again, Marina Lee comes to the school, she works with all the students, and she builds these very awesome pieces of artwork that go throughout the school, and just remind the students of this process that they went through, and provides these memories for this amazing experience, as you'll hear from the students. So I'm going to go through a little bit here about what the students are doing, and I'm going to have actually them share what's happening in each of these slides.
So this is everybody sanding the blocks for it to be painted on.
Now they're painting the first coat of white paint after they sanded down the blocks of wood.
They are now painting over the white coating and with black paint so they can use their oil pastels.
They make concentric circles with the oil pastels and they imprint it into the world.
In this slide, they're doing roots for the bottom of the art piece that we're making.
In this one, so the other class left and the kids are like finishing the other kids' artwork.
So just so to kind of see, if you look at the art on the right, after that class leaves, they start working on the art, and then a new class comes in and finishes it. So they all kind of work together to create these pieces.
Now they make all different types of concentric circles, flowers, and roots. They are gonna connect all of them together.
This is the bench that we haven't finished yet, but we started making, so.
This is Marina Lee and some other kids helping create the bench.
This is a mixture of paper and plastic, and we use this to make the chair.
There's someone like smoothing out the plaster on the bench.
So they're sanding it down to make it smoother, and they're using water to help do that.
then they make bead art.
So then I have a short video here just to kind of capture all the students and the work that they're doing. So I was going to have the students share a little bit about their experience and what they've enjoyed, what they've learned, and what they're really looking forward to. So, go, Julia.
So what I enjoyed was like smoothing out the bench and like making it smoother in areas. And I also enjoyed just having the artists there. It was a really cool experience. What I learned was like that even if a piece is not finished, you could like make a really good art piece or artwork out of it. And what I'm really looking forward to is she said that we would be able to paint the bench. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm also looking forward to being able to sit on it in our library. So that's very exciting.
Well, I really enjoyed having making a bench right in our art room. It's not something that happens every day, and so it's nice to do that kind of stuff with a artist. And then I'm really looking forward to having to be able to paint the bench, like Julia said, and then I'm also looking forward to maybe reading some of my favorite books, just by the bench, and I'm also excited to see where the bench is going to be placed because we have like library and there's like so much chairs to sit, so I don't know where we're going to fit it. So.
I have fun because she lets us go onto somebody else's artwork, and when we do that, I go onto somebody else's artwork, and Marina Lee says, okay, and somebody can improve on that. So I take that and I start improving on that, and she compliments us saying, good job. So I like that I can actually be part of making a chair and having it in our school for forever, and thinking about when we see it, we can see that Marina Lee was there with us, and I'm looking forward to having, like, painting the artwork with Marina Lee and painting with my friends, because whenever I have my friends around me, we work better together, we can talk, and we have a lot of fun.
So it's been a great experience, and it's not over. We still have work to do, as you saw with the bench, and just really excited to build these memories with the students at Robinwood. Every time they look at the bench, they'll remember what that means to them, and also they'll know like that experience and how it made them feel, because what I'm hearing from them is how much they're enjoying it and really enjoying how Marina Lee works with them on how things can grow, and is very nurturing and helping them to just have that growth mindset. So it's been a really great experience for our kids. So I want to thank Abby, Brennan, and Julia for coming tonight and speaking. So thank you.
Can I ask you, when you're older, do you think it'll be fun to come back to Robinwood and see what you made?
Yeah.
Because it's permanent, so it'll be there a long time. Yeah. And Ms. Marina, she's a great teacher, isn't she?
Yes, she's really nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so
Thanks for
much.
coming.
Thank you.
Item 8B is our new course approvals. It's an action item. We have Mr. Reuter, Mr. Cohn, and Ms. Preeman.
We are going to have a presentation this evening. We have a lot of courses spanning from 6th grade all the way through 12th grade this evening, and multiple presenters at this time. So I'm going to ask Mrs. King, our middle school principal, to join us.
And we're asking that if any staff that comes up, if you could sign in at the table. We have a sheet there for staff also. Thank you.
So we have Mr. Nelson and his students just shared their experiences at Robinwood and highlighted the value of equity this evening through the courses that we're bringing forward to you for approval for the 1920 school year. You will see all 5 of our values highlighted throughout. We won't explicitly state that, but as you think about the focus of teaching and learning in this district and the 6 teaching and learning principles that every student has the right to learn, instruction must be rigorous and relevant. Purposeful assessment drives our instruction that affects learning for students. Our learning is collaborative responsibility, for, starting here at the board for course approval all the way down to the student experience, as well as we bring students' strengths and experiences to learning through our courses and offerings, and we're responsive to the environments that engage our learners. So this evening, as we talk about the new courses starting in 6th grade all the way through the 12th grade level, we want to be mindful of those 6 teaching and learning principles that the Instructional Services Department builds their courses on, as well as our district values that are inherent in all of our programming. Last year at this time, I believe it was November 8th, we brought to you new courses and you approved for this current school year. So I wanted to recap those titles of those courses and the current participation of those courses that you approved, so I'll give you a minute to take a look. Those are all at the high school level. As you remember, Mr. Cohn and the FACE department as well as business department presented on those courses, as well as we had courses in the MATC dual and credit academies that were approved by you. Currently, those are year-long courses that are approved for college credit. Currently, those are the number of students that we have enrolled in those 4 different academies, and what the prerequisites or the results of those academies are. Mr. Volo this evening will be bringing forward new dual credit academies for your approval for the next academic year. I thought we could shed light on what you approved last year and students' numbers that are participating in that, so you can see the great work that's happening in Franklin and outside of Franklin to enrich our students and make those core values come alive. So as that you saw in the board reports tonight, we have many new courses, and we're going to start this evening with Mrs. King sharing the highlights of the new Forest Park Middle School course programming next academic school year. At the conclusion of her presentation, we'll open it up for questions specifically about Forest Park. Then we'll transition to Mr. Cohn to just speak about the Franklin High School capstone courses, and then to Brooke Delassis, Lori Dykstra, Abby Stowicki, and Steph Jewell to speak to Envision Academy, which was formerly Sabre Academy, and then the transition to Mr. Volo about GPS educational partnerships and dual enrollment academies, open that up for questions, and then Ms. Preeman will finish with a new special ed course we are proposing for this evening. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mrs. King to talk about Forest Park for the 1920 school year.
Perfect. I will point at you. Oh, too quick. There we go. We didn't talk about that. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm pleased to be here this evening to provide our recommendations for new courses at our new 6th through 8th grade middle school. One of our goals with becoming a 6th through 8th grade middle school was to provide increased opportunities for our 6th grade students, specifically in the elective or encore courses, and continued exploration at 7th and 8th grade. Many courses will be referenced this evening. Some of these courses are going to be completely new. Some of these courses are current courses, which will be revised to either move down to 6th or 7th grade. This transition then allows the opportunity for more rigorous and more exploration courses to be developed at 8th grade. Some courses are required by state statute. For example, in 6th grade, the state requires that all students be enrolled in an art class and a music class. State statute requires that in 7th and 8th grade, students have access to art and music, but they are not required by statute to take these courses. We are recommending some courses which we are recommending that some courses will be required as a school. Those courses will be discussed in more detail as we continue through this presentation. You will note that students have a forced exploratory experience at 6th grade and increased course offerings and choice at 7th and 8th grade. Perfect. In 6th grade, we are recommending 6th grade accelerated math. Through our math root cause team, we identified the need to provide pathways for acceleration at 6th grade. This will allow us to provide accelerated math for students beginning in 6th grade. Along with computer applications and intro to engineering and technology, family and consumer science will now be offered to 6th grade students. These courses are designed to introduce, family and consumer science is designed to introduce students to life skills as needed as teenagers and through adulthood. We are recommending a 6th grade world language exploratory. We will be requiring students to take this exploratory class. All 6th graders will have the exposure to the 3 languages offered at Franklin Public Schools, German, Japanese, and Spanish, in order to help them make an informed decision about which course to then take in 7th grade and beyond. The other courses noted on this slide are either existing 6th grade courses or 7th grade courses that will be revised for 6th grade students starting in 2019-2020 school year. In 7th grade, we are recommending a new course called Introduction to Event Planning. This elective course expands on courses in 6th grade and is designed with alignment with 8th grade and high school courses and allows students an avenue to take a course in which they may have a specific interest. We are recommending a health class that would be required for all 7th grade students. Currently, our students receive health during their 7th and 8th grade physical education experience. Based on the data from our Youth Risk Behavior Survey, the Gallup Survey, and what we know about the importance of social and emotional learning, we are recommending that all 7th grade students engage in this health course. We are recommending American music at 7th grade, which combines the study of music from various regions throughout America with in-class performance opportunities. This course is in addition to our other 7th grade music offerings of band, orchestra, and choir. We are recommending a variety of new courses at the 8th grade level, since many of our previous 8th grade courses will be revised and offered in 7th grade. Computer applications, teen cuisine, introduction to fashion and design, manufacturing and design, automation and robotics, and fitness and conditioning are all elective 8th grade courses which will build upon student learning in previous courses and these new elective offerings. Lastly, we are recommending that all 8th grade students be required to take personal finance. As the district adopted the personal finance standards last year, we know there is now a graduation requirement at the high school level. We see it fitting that students have a formalized experience prior to Franklin High School. We will be utilizing the K-8 standards. As you can see by the course description, it will allow students to better understand their financial well-being.
As we think about the robust programming we currently have at the middle school, adding 6th grade there, as Mrs. King alluded to, scaffolds down some of our existing program, which opens that door for new 8th grade course offerings. We continue to explore, as Ms. King shared last spring about the Forest Park programming and structures, how Core Plus will fit into this equation. Currently, Core Plus, it's a placeholder in a schedule. It's not a formalized course. And it's used for a variety of purposes to meet a variety of student needs, from remediation to enrichment opportunities. So we'll continue to engage with our staff at the middle school and see how that philosophy can continue as we look at our new courses, look at student enrollment in those courses, and knowing that students will still have space within their schedule for Core Plus opportunities, and what the purpose is for all students for those Core Plus experiences. Mm-hmm. So that was a lot of information about 3 years of schooling that Mrs. King shared with you. So we asked if you have any questions about any of the course offerings or what that looks like, maybe specifically the required courses we're proposing.
So what's a typical day? 6th graders get how many classes a day? Can you kind of explain?
Yep. So 6th grade will have 4 60-minute courses that will be the 4 cores. And so they will have math every day, literacy every day. They will have science every day, and social studies will typically run opposite of writing. And then they'll have 3 45-minute elective periods. So within that, they have to have music, they have to have PE, they have to have art, and then those additional exploratories that we have put in place of world language exploratory, family consumer science, tech ed, computer applications. Those courses all run A, B day schedule, so opposite one another. And that is also where students engage in Core Plus, which Mr. Reiter was just talking about, of extension, enrichment, intervention, whatever a student may need is also part of that 45-minute every other day.
So are they required to take the FACE class? Or?
Yes. So at
That's required.
6th grade, one of our beliefs about middle school is exploration. And so in 6th grade, we do have force exploratory, where all 6th graders will have family consumer science, computer applications, engineering and technology, art class, and then they will all choose a music. So there's a little bit of choice in 6th grade, but they're forced to explore in those areas.
And also language.
And language.
And they don't have those opportunities now.
6th grade has art by statute. They have to in the elementary school, and they have music, but they do not have family.
Phy-Ed.
And Phy-Ed.
So as you remember, part of the referendum was expanding exposure to the Encore courses for 6th graders so that they would have more of an experience in a 3-year setting so that they can make some informed decisions about high school courses and career pathways.
So then in 7th grade, it's similar.
7th grade is similar. They start to have more choices where they'll choose a world language. They have the choice to continue in a music. If they choose not to continue in a music, that opens up more spaces in their schedule to have, like you see on the slide, but for 7th grade, within all of those different areas, another family consumer science type course where you saw the fashion-type courses. There's 2 different engineering and technology courses they can choose from. There's 2 in the business area and also 2 in art. So they start to have more choices, and then in 8th grade continues to have that increased opportunity for choice. But each year, they have 3 45-minute periods, A, B day.
Slot this.
Correct.
These courses.
And some of us asked questions ahead of time, so we have our questions answered. Could you address the 2 questions from community comment? Are you able to do that on courses?
As far as STEM Core Plus?
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the, that's a great question that was brought forward. As we look at currently, STEM Core Plus has criteria based on data for entrance, and that is something that we'll continue to explore. Looking at the presentation Mrs. King gave last spring about the Forest Park programming, we talked about more STEM opportunities for all kids, and then looking at how do we scaffold those based on data, similar to our accelerated math program. We look at data points and entry and meet students where they're at to provide them the opportunities that afford them to be successful. I think when you think about our accelerated math course at 6th grade, current and different bell schedules, currently we have a different bell schedule at the middle school for 2 grade levels, and students that are identified for accelerated math at the elementary are bussed over from the elementaries to be in 7th grade first hour math. So we've always had to navigate that concern and that question. We'll continue to do that as you have a school of 1,000 kids, and you want to make sure that when the bell rings, we're moving them safely and efficiently to the right courses. With 6th grade acceleration, that just now structurally allows us to identify through the RTI process the students that will be successful in grade level above math. And then Mrs. King and her staff has the luxury of working those bell schedules to make sure students' needs are met. Just like at the elementary level, if a child is grade level accelerated in math, is in 3rd grade and 4th grade, those math times never match up. So the principals have to work through a scheduling process. In a 2-person house, we know we have designated science labs that are going to allow us to have an even more robust science curriculum, as we've started a curriculum review process just this last month in science. So science will be taught in science rooms and labs, similar to the high school labs, and math will be taught in a standardized classroom that you've seen pictures of and done a virtual tour of. You're welcome.
I think some of these classes are really exciting for the middle school. And I believe you told me some of these are kind of fluid, depending on how many students sign up for them. So,
Similar to the staff, the process at the high school, students enroll, and then numbers drive whether we run classes or not.
thank you. Any other questions?
So, you know, we have standards for the science, social studies. What other standards then exist for some of these other classes, like the introduction to event planning? You know, what standards are they addressing in those, some of those electives?
Yeah, Mr. Cohn and I just had a conversation about 45 minutes ago, so I'll turn over to him to speak to that, as he's been integral with the connection with the career pathway to the high school courses.
Yeah. Every subject area we teach in this district has a set of state-adopted standards and district-adopted standards that align to it. So in family consumer science, there's a kind of a rich tapestry of standards ranging from very specific 7th grade food standards, such as can make a dessert, can utilize a meat thermometer. Those are standards in family consumer science aligned to food, all the way to interior design, to marketing. You know, that's true really of all of these areas. So as you move into business, think about computer applications. As you look at engineering and robotics, they're all based on state standards that we've adopted that are grade level appropriate and then scaffolded to the high school so that the skills we're teaching at the middle level prepare students for our high school courses and then align with their career pathway beyond.
And those standards are on the website somewhere?
Mm-hmm. Yep, they're on our website, and they're also on the DPI website.
All right.
Thank you, Mrs.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, and I have the pleasure this evening of kind of talking you through a new high school capstone course proposal. I invite Mr. Volo up to join me in having this conversation. Over the last 3 years, as we've had these conversations in November and beyond, we've talked about the importance of capstone courses at the high school level. And a capstone course, again, is this kind of research-based course that really addresses primarily at the senior level, but sometimes the junior level, a specific career pathway and provides students with a rich experience that connects community partners with our students. And so on the left-hand side, you'll see characteristics of a capstone course again, and some of the highlights there are they're project-based. They provide opportunities for application kind of beyond the theory that students learn along the way. Frequently, they end in some sort of hands-on, rich project or presentation that kind of applies multiple years of learning to a final product. It also involves active mentorship, so community mentors, community partners who are in the field that are working regularly with our students, either on-site or off-site, as they kind of work through the development of that product or presentation to get feedback and to engage in a deeper level of learning. It emphasizes problem solving and higher order thinking. These are things that are important in all of our courses, but are really well suited to a capstone experience in the senior year as students have moved through multiple years within a pathway. On the right-hand side, you're going to see just a handful of the courses that we've adopted in the last couple years related to this concept of capstone. So we have a business capstone called Launch, which is in its second year this year. We have 3 FACE capstone experiences, Reach, Inspired Design, and Franklin Foodie. For a while now, we've had Engineering Design and Development, which is our Tech Ed Engineering capstone. We have Biomedical Innovations, which is our Science and Health Science capstone. And then last year, or 2 years ago, we adopted AP capstone, which is an Advanced Placement College Board capstone experience made up of 2 courses, AP Seminar and AP Research. And so this idea of capstone has been something we've built on over the last couple years, and the feedback not only from our students, but our community partners who have been engaged with those experiences has been incredibly positive. And we've had, over the last year, a number of students, particularly with the Launch course, that have come back and talked about how valuable that experience has been for them as they've gone on to post-secondary experiences in those related fields. So with that, in the development of the coherence plan, it was time for us to begin working on a capstone experience in manufacturing. In the coherence plan, as we presented it to you a couple of times, there's a specific strategy in Goal 5 related to community partnerships that reads, the Director of Teaching and Learning, high school staff, and high school administration will develop a school-based manufacturing capstone to begin with the 2019-2020 school year. That strategy also lived within the Education for Employment plan and was something that's been supported by our community over the last couple of years. With that, we've begun the work. Really, we began last spring and then through the summer and into this fall of developing that experience in terms of what that'll look like. And so it's going to take a couple of different forms. Currently, we have a course called Metals Manufacturing that is we call it Metals 3. It's kind of the end of our manufacturing experience, but it doesn't have the characteristics of a capstone experience that we would expect at that junior, senior level as we've defined it. And so we're recommending this evening that that course be eliminated and that it be replaced with 2 new courses, Sabre Manufacturing 1 and Sabre Manufacturing 2, both of which will be in conjunction with each other, one continuous capstone experience for our students. And I've bulleted for you just some of the characteristics of that course that align, again, with that concept of capstone that'll be important as we build that course out. 2 notes in terms of planning for that course. One is we have a community advisory committee under the leadership of our metals manufacturing instructor, Noelle Bishog, who's here this evening. She facilitates a group of about 7 or 8 of our community partners who are executives in manufacturing in our community and surrounding communities that she meets with on a regular basis to provide feedback about this experience and talk about everything from kind of the range of products we'll make for student or for the community to how they'll be involved as mentors and working with our students. Alongside that, we have a steering committee of 7 teachers and then Mr. Volo and myself in Tech Ed and Business who have gone about the hard work of designing and planning out this course, including everything from alignment of standards to just the structure of the course and how it'll run and how we're going to engage students and how we'll build skills over time. And so overall, this is something we're pretty excited about. We feel like it's well aligned with the work we've done, not only with Capstone, but with METC in kind of strengthening our courses overall and working towards transcripted credit. And we feel it'll be a significant value add for our students. Mr. Volo, anything you'd like to add about that piece.
That was pretty detailed. I would like, again, lots of this wouldn't be where it was if not for leadership of both Noel and Nick. So, I mean, I can't say enough about their passion for this work and for creating this opportunity for our students. And whether it's the community advisory group that Noel facilitates or the group that gets together to talk about this capstone experience, it takes many hands to make work like this happen. And we have teachers involved on different parts, from the business team to the other tech ed teachers to, just a ton of people who really want this to happen and be great for our kids. And it's amazing what happens when we open up our doors and our minds a little bit and think a little differently, and it results in really great things. So again, thank you, Nick, and thank you, Noel, for your leadership on this.
With that, we'll open up to questions for this particular course.
So it's 1 hour a day, every day for a year? Is that when this happens, or is it?
So we're building the course with a lot of flexibility in terms of how students can experience it. And so the way that it's being built, because it's going to simulate a manufacturing business, we want to run the course every day for one block. That said, students will have a multitude of options in terms of enrolling. They could enroll every other day for a year. They could enroll every other day for a semester. They could enroll every day for a year. They could enroll every day for a semester. So within that structure, they'll have multiple opportunities that'll fit their schedule in terms of how they can experience it. And as they demonstrate those skills, they'll progress from Sabre Manufacturing 1 to Sabre Manufacturing 2, depending on not only how frequently they're meeting, but how kind of quickly they master the skills and show and demonstrate that mastery to move between them. So it's built to be highly flexible.
So what kind of products are you anticipating working on?
Yeah. And I actually might turn that question over to Ms. Bishaw, because she's been working on that piece.
Good evening. So we've, can you hear me? Can't hear myself. We've already established some relationships with area businesses in the Franklin Business Park, and we do have our first confirmed product, which is a piece of stainless steel that they're going to be cutting off and boring. And we have a mentor coming on Friday to start working with the students and kind of talking about their processes and training the students and building up that relationship. We are also going to be coming up with some of our own products. So we're going to do some work for the business park and some things that we're going to craft. So we're looking at chicken grills, keychains, LED signs on the plasma table. So we're trying to get really creative and think about how we can support the sports at our school, maybe make some things for them. What would people in the community like to purchase? So we're doing a lot of the planning phase around all of that, but the students are very excited and want to lay the groundwork for something that's going to continue to grow even after they leave the high school. And they promise to come back as mentors.
So do you take ideas from individuals? I mean, I have a couple ideas.
Absolutely, yes, yes.
For a partner to, okay.
100%,
I'll
yeah.
have to talk to you, okay. And so you talk also about some of these other things that happen in a manufacturing plant, like accounting, invoicing, shipping, receiving, all that surrounds the manufacturing process. How does that fit into the class? Or are you really talking about the metals guys that are going to come in and make something?
Yeah.
Or how do you get that into the class?
So it's really designed to simulate a business, right? And so
Right.
there are multiple aspects of a business, from marketing to invoicing to engineering and design, all the way to actual production. And so the way that the course is organized is the Sabre Manufacturing 1 is really built on some of those more fundamental skills and focused on teams, right? So you might have a welding team, you might have a production manufacturing team, you might have a business team that's kind of working on those different aspects. And students in Sabre Manufacturing 2 will serve as the leaders of those kind of departments. And so it's really built in a way to help students specialize in some specific areas that can lend value to that overall experience. Andy Thompson, one of our business teachers, who's also the launch capstone teacher, is on the committee and has been really helpful to us in terms of thinking through that business side of it and how we might tap some students in our business department who are incredibly talented and looking for an experience that kind of fits what we're proposing here.
And what does this typical student bring to the class? I mean, it's a junior, right? And are they taking an AP class and then just doing this as a experience, or who are we appealing to? And
Yeah, so I'll let Ms. Bieshog speak to the progression in terms of manufacturing.
Sure. So there's intro classes, welding and machining, and those are semester-long courses that are typically taken by freshmen coming into the school. Then they can have the option of taking Metals 2, where they start to get a little bit more specialized. So the students that are coming into Sabre Manufacturing would have already completed Metals 2. And then when they get to this point where Nick talked about kind of getting into teams, that's where they might be going into the machinist department or the welding department. So they're going to come in with the technical skills that they need, at least to get started. But then that's where the mentor relationship really comes in, where they're going to be diving deep depending on what product they're actually making at that time. The skills that we're really going to be working on when we get into Sabre Manufacturing 1 and 2 are much more focused around those employability skills. Can they communicate effectively with each other? Can they solve problems? Can they make decisions? Can they give back to the community and do something that doesn't just benefit themselves? So those are really the skills that we're going to be spending most of our time working on at that point. And you know, one student might really become a great TIG welder, and then another student might focus on working on the CNC mill. So what they end up with could be very different depending on what team they end up working on or what products they're manufacturing.
I would just add, we've been really intentional in planning the middle school programming to make sure it aligns up, right? So students will have their first exposure to this as early as 6th grade now, and then we'll continue to kind of build those skills over time.
so they kind of, it seems like we have these, you start here in 6th grade and you come out on the other end, whereas where's the exploration? Where does the high school student say, I just want to try this class here, and then they want to,
Yes.
we get to do that?
So you heard Ms. King talk about forced exploration at the middle level and that idea that we're exposing students there, and then I'll let Mr. Bolos speak to the high school.
Yeah, and I would say that, to your point, Linda, it's really important to me that students, maximize their 4 years at the high school. And when we think about, 4K to 12, where we'll be, right? It's that students don't limit themselves to simply saying, I'm going to do this one thing, and therefore everything I do is built around that. So that larger thing, you'll hear me say it to freshman preview night, any other time I'm in front of students and parents, is try things now, try things when you're in this safe, controlled environment of high school, figure out what you like, figure out what you don't like, right? And to your point, does a student take advanced placement class and then take this? I'd say currently that's probably rare, right? And that's unfortunate that we don't have students try more things when they have 32 credits to earn, over the course of a high school career potentially, and they choose not to, or they say that's not for me because I'm doing blank. And they maybe don't even realize what they don't know because they never get a chance to experience it. So it's really imperative that we educate our parents and our students to know that there's more than one way to get through high school, and it's at your benefit to really get into this world of leadership, employability skills, life skills, right, beyond just I'm doing this, therefore I will do this. I've had parents say things like, I know what my student's going to be when they grow up. They're talking about a middle schooler. I'm like, do you really? That's amazing, right? My parents couldn't say that now necessarily, right? I mean, so when we talk about that thing, it's a journey. How do we get people to explore and take advantage of every one of those courses that we have, in departments? And how do we get students to know what we offer and to try it and be okay trying it, even though it's out of their comfort zone? I mean, that's the ongoing thing we have to do. We have to do a better job making those kids feel like they should take it.
So, and there's only one prerequisite, though. I mean, you do have to plan to get into this, though,
So
right?
you would
can't
need
just
metals
try it.
2 as well as machining.
Okay.
That said, like we also know that not every student starts at Franklin as a freshman, so we always kind of have those things where sometimes we might have a student enter late, and then, we talk about how do we get that student to an experience like this in spite of where they were before they came to us.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question, and then we're going to see if anyone else has any questions on metals. But, so you're required to have a metals 2 before you go on to this. And so obviously you have metals 1. Do we have any other, because these are for 11th and 12th grade, so do you have any other metals classes for freshmen and juniors besides 1 and 2?
Well, the freshman courses are the 2-semester intro courses. So there's intro to welding and manufacturing, and then there's intro to machining.
Okay.
And they have to have machining in order to move into metals to their sophomore year. Or they could take intro to machining as a senior if they want to explore that, or intro to welding. So they can have some of this experience without necessarily being in the student-run business, even if they haven't taken those courses, before their junior year. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions?
So the person that wants to be the accountant guy isn't going to check out what the manufacturing floor looks like then? Unlikely. Wouldn't be able to, because.
Yeah, so I think the long-term goal there is we're going to start small and build, but I think there will be a pathway or an opportunity for students who are just the business student to join this experience later on.
And I think what we're going to be doing early on will be more informal partnerships. So for example, right now the students are reaching out to the art department to say, do you have anybody who could design a logo for us? And finding other students that have skills, or maybe they can design a website. They've got something where they can partner with the students that are in this business, but really, bringing in other students. Or there's students that are working in the Roar store and they already have some understanding about inventory. Maybe we can connect them. And so I think at the beginning phases, it's going to be a little bit more informal. And as this grows, our intention is to formalize those pathways so that they kind of come together and connect.
And so you're going to come back next year and tell us about all the success then, next year? Yeah. We're going to hear about this again.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'll be buying the products that are,
We'll have chicken grills
aimed
lined
towards
up here.
consumers.
We'll need sample products.
Right, I'll say.
Linda will present your idea.
I have an idea. I have actually two things I want to pursue.
Thank you.
All right, we'll transition to our next presentation for program approval this evening. I want to welcome Brooke DeLassis, Personalized Learning System Specialist, Lori Dykstra, and Abby Stowicki, the newly formed Envision Academy teachers, and Steph Jewell, one of our associate principals at Franklin High School. If you remember back to June 15th, Brooke and Lori at the time with Mr. Cohn and Ms. Sundstrom shared an update about the review process of Sabre Academy, and tonight they're here to share the end results. So I'll turn it over to Ms. DeLassis.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to start by just especially thanking Lori and Abby for all of their thoughtful and hard work. They've been meeting consistently, really every day, and putting a lot of effort into the planning behind this. And in addition, also to thank Ms. Jewell and Mr. Volo for their support of them as well. So I'm going to give the broader overview of, we have 2 slides here, just to talk through the program and where we have come to, and then we can open it up for questions. So really what we want to do tonight is just clarify what was brought to you in June, which was kind of theory and concept, and explain how that's been brought to, excuse me, theory, and how we've applied that to the concept that is now in place. So really the goal is programmatic overview. I don't know that we'll hit every detail, and some of that is still in process. We've been working on this since August, but it still has things to be done, but we want to give you the broad strokes. So we made this visual to help conceptualize, because I think in doing this, really what we're doing is taking students from FHS and placing them in a separate environment. At the point where they would be entering Envision Academy, they are no longer, they're enrolled in FHS, but they're not necessarily a part of that day-to-day. So we want to give you that overall structure of what that looks like, because it is different than the bell schedule that you're used to seeing in classes as they function currently. So really there's 3 stages of the program, and the first stage is the intake process. This would be done in conjunction with this administration, student services, teachers, family, and student. And the goal of that intake process is the understanding of the student on the part of the teachers and staff, and then the student also understanding themselves. And by that, what we mean is we want students to come in and they might be experiencing some sort of barrier to schooling, and to better understand what that is. We want to also be able to know where they're at academically, where they're at socially, emotionally, and get a better sense of them as a person and learner, so that learning can be customized for them after this intake process. There's also an orientation phase that goes along with that, and all of that culminates, and you can see this in the upper left-hand corner, that's kind of what I'm talking through, in a who am I presentation. So the student has gone through a lot of reflection, there's been a lot of coaching and understanding of where they're at, and they're giving that presentation to say who they are as a person and learner, and here is my path forward.
How much time is involved in that?
Sure. Should we do questions now or later?
Why don't we wait till the end so we can, some
Okay.
of them might be answered.
Okay. The next phase of the program is the student experience, and I guess I'd also say, like, these aren't the same. I know they look kind of similar in size, but I would say, like, the smaller things are on the side, and that big chunk that student experiences is in the middle. And really, that's the learning phase. So if you dip down to the middle and it says learning, and then it says academic competencies, post-secondary planning, employability skills, and personal goals, really what's happening is those are the 4 areas where students need to show competency, and they're pulling all of those together in different ways that the teachers will help them to customize. So what that could look like is project-based learning, it could look like online learning, it could look like service learning, it could look like, employability, being out in the field and actually in a job. And the teachers will customize with the students that plan of what's going to occur, how they're going to show that, why they're interested in that piece of learning, and then what that proof is, how they're going to demonstrate that learning. And so the difference here is you might be, whereas in the regular high school program, you might be in social studies class, and then you might be in English class. Here you could pull in multiple skills and thread them through into one kind of project or activity and kind of pull those together and demonstrate understanding of multiple pieces of that through one project or way of learning. So that would culminate in people, and that's where we get to the proof piece. So they're taking those pieces and putting them in a portfolio. They do have we have specific academic competencies laid out. We have post-secondary plan and pieces of a career portfolio they have to do. The employability skills are the Wisconsin State employability skills, and then in addition, the personal goals would really be crafted around each student's needs in terms of social, emotional, or other barriers they may be experiencing in their life. And they would be showing how they're progressing and working through all those pieces. And those pieces would end up in the portfolio. And then finally, at the end of all of this, it culminates in that final presentation where they're having to get up and defend their learning in terms of their growth and progress, and showing that they're actually prepared to graduate from high school. Then, let me just check my notes. Okay, that's good for now. Okay, next slide, please. Finally, and we put the culture at the bottom. I mean, it could be a circle, but really it's showing that this is the foundation, right? We want to make sure that students really have this sense of belonging. If they're not successful currently, it's for a reason, and we want to make sure that this is a place where it can function more like a family, as a team. They feel supported, their emotional needs are met, but that's also married with a set of high expectations. So high expectations, high support. That this is a place where you can be successful, and we're going to help you do that. That will be done in multiple different ways. So I referenced before, specifically the social emotional learning pieces and also the employability skills. There's a lot of overlap in both of those things, but specific lessons around those. The use of restorative practices, the use of circles in terms of a daily routine, strategic celebrations, both about personal growth and the class as well, and then finally strong collaboration with the student services team, so that could be support in multiple different ways, either from the social worker, the counselors, the school psychologist, and also in reaching out to other agencies. That's it in a nutshell. It's a lot of information. I'm sure I forgot something, and I'm sure you have questions.
So how long does intake take, or,
Sure.
and when do we get to the plan? And how many kids are you expecting to be involved in this academy?
Right now, for next semester, we'll continue with our current Sabre Academy students and then start a new section of Envision Academy. So we are projecting approximately 20 students for next semester, and then next year, we will open it up to 2 sections and increase our numbers at that time. As far as the intake process goes, I don't know that we have a set amount of days that we're gonna have kids run through that, but initially we want students to come in, and that's when we would do some assessments. They would do individual assessments on math and reading. We will assess, try to take a look at what credits they have, what competencies they will need to complete. We want to take a look at their academic and career plans that they have developed or do not have developed, and have the students do some reflection about where they feel they are in some social emotional areas and employability areas, because all that information will help us target instruction. And then we are hoping to launch into project-based learning, and we've talked about structuring it and doing a lot of that together where we're teaching the process. I don't know if I can guesstimate how long, but I mean, I would envision probably a good month that process would take. I don't know. Anthony.
Yeah, to establish those routines, that structure, and really get through that first part of the PBL, the project-based learning, and that format, and teach into that as well.
So you enter at the beginning of the year or at the semester break? Nothing?
This year, currently, it'll be in January.
You don't?
Semester. It could be either. It could be either, yes.
Okay, so it's not like you start the school year and things aren't working out and then you can transition to this. Their entry points are defined.
Yes.
I like the direction you've taken this, especially separating it from Connects, the way Connects is going. And I said that back in June when this was first brought to us, but I wonder, and I don't know if you have the answer, how do you cut it off at 11th grade? You know, how do you separate it from a 9th grade or a 10th grade student? How do you know that, 11th grade is the right time to do this? Or even an 8th grade student going into 9th grade, how do you know when a student is ready for this in 11th grade? Do you have that answer? No, I don't know.
I was gonna say, honestly, no. I
Right.
don't think anybody has that answer, but I think students have the opportunity to try high school. Some kids are really not successful at the middle school. They come to the high school, and they're more successful. And I think vice versa. Some kids go to the middle school and they're not struggling, but they come to the high school and they do struggle. I think over time, having the opportunity to be in classes and try the traditional setting is appropriate for students, and then if it's not working out, figure that out from there, I guess. I think one of the things that is different about our program is the employability skills, and we've talked about opening it up to younger kids, and we feel that our hope is that eventually kids can be independent and go to work part of their day, that can be their path, and we feel like that would be a challenge to do with 9th and 10th graders. So, I don't know if you guys have there.
I would just add 2 things. One, that we have had conversation about opening it up to 10th graders, second semester. So that is on the table at the moment, so that might be a shift from what was in the report in the spring. Additionally, I would say this is one of many options of support and intervention at the high school, so it can't fit like it's not supposed to be a catch-all at this point. You know, it's fitting a certain set or a certain outcomes it's trying to reach, and so it's one of other options available too. So I would say there could be conversation in the future about what that looks like, but for right now, this is the target, and that's what we're trying to accomplish. So so maybe further conversation.
And something to keep in mind too is that like when a student starts this intake process, there's been a whole lot of other background leading up to that point. Like that student's story doesn't start just with this intake process. There's been a lot of teaming on each of the students that we're considering for this program even before they would reach that process, where we're trying to figure out what is the best support, because for some students it's a small change to something within the regular high school that will work. And we really want this program to be about students who that setting just isn't right for them. So this is not the first type of support. There's a lot that comes before it too, to keep in mind that we're really trying to find kids that fit this specific program that we can't support in another way in our high school environment.
But in our guidance department, though, we're touching every student a couple times a year at least,
Yeah.
to know we're not losing
Right.
a student.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do students also take other electives? You know, is it all totally self-contained, or do they have access to the rest of the rich array of options here?
That's a great question. We've been having that discussion, and I don't think it's entirely firm, but conceptually, we would like to land on a way, if possible, that they can perhaps audit a course if it aligned with what their kind of chosen focus is. So if you're really interested, let's use welding and manufacturing because they're here. If that's your passion and you're not going out in the field, you're not being placed in a job, we also would want to take advantage potentially of what's available within the school. So finding ways to do that. I think that's kind of like a long-term vision and kind of working through what that would look like versus just randomly placing kids in classes. Because the other piece behind this is if you're coming in, really we're looking at competencies versus credit attainment, and there's a little bit of trickiness there that we have to just kind of work through.
So what if I see myself as a rock star and I don't really care about social studies, English, and all that? What does that plan look like? And
Yeah, well, you still have to earn those competencies, so you still have to show that. I would think that our talented staff will be able to help students see, those things occur, music is full of cultural interplay, right? So where do those things occur, and how can we use and harness that student's interest and pull in the literacy piece and pull in the social studies piece. So it's more of a student-centered focus where we can use their passion and interest to kind of drive the work and hopefully re-engage them through that. Does that make sense?
And then how do we come out of this with, meeting our graduation requirements, These credits all have to be checked off, and this comes out of this box somewhere?
Do you guys want to talk about the work you did in liaising with the departments?
The competencies and how you arrived at them.
We have done a lot of research on different competencies and looked at the standards in the different departments at the high school. We have met with each department and had them review the standards that we have, pose questions. We don't have everything mapped out, but we have had some departments that have offered to be on the panel and review student work with us. So we feel confident in obviously their expertise and what we have, and have aligned it with what's going on in their courses. So
It overlaps. It overlaps directly with all of the standards that we have adopted as a school and district.
Is it just one presentation, or is it different presentations along the way as they acquire skills or competencies? Or?
Yeah, both. So I know the graphic is not super granular, but those pieces of proof are kind of ending up in their portfolio. So their portfolio will be that whole big piece of all the competencies with the academics and all of the post-secondary planning. Will be a lot of things there. And then the final presentation, and there can be presentations along the way there too. But the final presentation is the one that's really talking about kind of that defense of why I'm a graduate and why I'm ready to move on. So multiple steps.
So
Yes.
students will have a digital portfolio and they'll update it every semester. And then it'll have all the different areas in there, and then they can choose what documents they want to include to demonstrate their understanding of the different competencies.
And then through the conferring cycle or conferring process and feedback cycles, those students will constantly be getting feedback around the different competencies. So it's not like at the end, oh, hey, you're ready to graduate, or no, you can't. It's constant feedback throughout their whole learning process. So that way they are in tune and accountable for all of their learning.
And are they part of a class? Like, this is I'm part of this 20 kids that move through. So there's part of
My
that
cohort, my class, for the
cohort.
culture.
You are part of a cohort, so you're.
Yep.
So it's not personalized in a way that I don't really have to connect with. It's just where I'm at right now. It's not. You're part of a class. And you kind of move together or not, as far as acquiring competencies. And
Time-wise, is that what you mean?
yeah, right.
I think in a mastery-based system, you would move at your own pace, but I don't think, are you asking like if everyone's gonna progress and move in a project, like we're all doing this project, we're all doing this project?
Right. Yeah, I'm just trying to. Yeah.
Yeah,
How you,
I think it'll be a combination of both is what we're talking about at the moment. So there'll be some group work because they want to make sure that the culture is there, but then it could be, part of the day is spent, like we're all doing an English and social studies project and we're working on that together, and we've also pulled in some skills that we know everybody needs to have and ways to bring us together as a group. But over here, you have this math need and you have this social or science need, and so there's time for those customized paths as well. Because they're in there for if they're in there for half the day, not the whole time to be spent all together.
also, they're not in this. Their whole school day is not in this program.
Well, I was just speaking about spring. So
Oh.
the spring because of the transition. But yes, in the future, it would still be chunked out. So they're not, we don't want them doing, I think, just like us in our normal everyday life. If we do one thing for an entirety of the day, it might, that doesn't benefit us necessarily.
But your day is, you're assigned to that classroom or that's, and so attendance still matters. You have to be there. So that it's not just,
Yes.
if I learn faster, I can come in later because I don't know. Okay. Wow. It's different.
Are there any other questions?
Two more questions, sorry. Exams, we all have AP exams, and that's how we seem to measure everything. Any kind of certification, you gotta take an exam. Are exams part of any of this, or not? Are you going away from that? We're just gonna do,
Like, as in, at the end of the semester, you sit an exam that's comprehensive of the whole.
as in any kind of exam,
Yeah.
are you anticipating any kind of a test taking, like we have to do this? It's a skill that maybe you might encounter once you leave here. If you want to take post-secondary, sometimes you have to take tests. Is that part of any of the?
Yeah, we talked, there won't be like a final exam. We're looking at their portfolio as more of their final assessment. But we've actually just this week, we're talking about how we might customize juniors and seniors, where juniors might do more ACT prep and do different test-taking skills. And maybe at that same time, seniors might be working on writing a resume and a cover letter and doing more employability pieces. So we have talked a little bit about, we want to incorporate reading and math skills weekly and make sure that we're targeting those areas. And so within that, we would assess after, I don't know if you want to call it a unit or after they do that, but I don't envision a huge final exam, if that makes sense.
Do you want to speak to like standardized tests or the math tests or anything? The ACT test or ACT for juniors, yeah, they will participate.
Oh, they will take the.
Yes, and we'll do ACT prep with the junior cohort, other junior group of students that we will have, so that way they are prepared for that. Even thinking if a student wants to go on to a four-year college or even a two-year college, and looking through how can we then prep them for typical college life of, test-taking strategies and note-takings and things like that. So they will have a chance to go
They also intend to use some testing just to kind of figure out a baseline of where students are at coming into their program so that they can try to figure out the proper competencies, because the competencies that they're using do span like 9 through 12, like everything a student would get in high school in terms of learning and skills. So they're also intending to use some testing in that sense. So they won't have like, I took a chemistry class and took a chemistry exam, but they will have various forms of testing, so they won't be completely new to that.
Thank you for bringing the vision to reality this evening and informing us. We'll bring you back as this gets going to share the highlights and successes of the program. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to ask Mr. Volo to join us again this evening as he's going to talk about our GPS partnership as well as dual enrollment academies through MATC.
Thank you. There's some box elder bugs trying to winter over in the boardroom. Just going to point that out. So may or may not have had one on me just a couple seconds ago, but I'm dealing all right with it. So I don't think they bite, right? What you just heard from in terms of Envision, and then Ms. Evans, you referred to the Connects Learning Center. Those are different ways that we get students, right, to that achievement of a Franklin Public Schools education. And when we came to you last year and talked about our graduation policy, we talked around this idea of board-approved alternative education programs. To that end, we had the opportunity in the last year to learn more about a partnership that's right in our community that previously we've not explored. And that partnership is with a group called GPS Education Partners. It's a group that was founded in 2000 out in Eagle in Generac with one school district that currently serves almost 4 dozen school districts across the state. But what GPS offers that connects, and even Envision does not, it's another off-campus placement wherein students satisfy local graduation requirements via actual live teachers in person and a blended curriculum via their own learning management system, where they are required to work for the second half of their day. So for 4 hours a day they're in a classroom. For another 4 hours a day, they're actually on a workplace working each and every day. As such, they must demonstrate employability. Right? They must be on time. They must attend. And again, they're satisfying their education while they work. So specifically, GPS was started as a program called Second Chance in order to help students who are not successful in a typical high school program succeed and complete high school. And I'm familiar with it from a prior experience, but the reason I'm excited for it as a potential for Franklin students is it's not something we're committing to sending a number of students to in the sense of we must or we will. It could be another option for students to demonstrate what high school can be and also connect. When they're not connecting to a campus, they do appeal to or find appeal in the idea of working every day. They can be hired and employed, which means they'll do things like pass a drug test, get through interviews, have on-the-job training. Right? That's all part of the employability. And they actually earn a youth apprenticeship certificate as well as a manufacturing certificate through their experience there. So I come to you asking for GPS Education Partners, and yes, GPS doesn't really stand for anything. Part of their branding, it's not an acronym, not an abbreviation, it's GPS. And I forgot how novel that is when they made that branding change, but it doesn't stand for something partners, no, it doesn't. It would allow us to, as a student arrives who's a good fit, send a student to a place where they can complete high school and they can work in a way that currently we don't have. Right? So Connects is off campus, Envision is on campus, and it really depends on the expertise of our own staff and really leans into the stuff you just heard. GPS is another way to, again, engage students in school who've not been successful, who've been disengaged, who've been disconnected, and have them every day go to school and then go to work and then walk across that stage with their graduating cohort as a graduate from their local high school, in our case, it'd be Franklin High School. So with that, I know that you had this, these talking points. I've already answered some questions outside of the meeting, but I'd love to hear some questions from you in regards to GPS and the possibility of adding one additional alternative pathway for our students at Franklin Public Schools.
It said in your report that similar to open enrollment out costs.
Oh, yep.
So are we reimbursed like open enrollment?
So in this case, their cost structure, so the cost per student is $6,500 for a student to go to GPS. So if we send a student and they're there for the year, we get a bill. We have similar programs like that already. I believe the current open enrollment costs, the estimate for this year was like $7,300 or something like that, if we have a student leave Franklin and go elsewhere. So that I equate it to that number just 'cause it's a similar number in terms of their cost structure. GPS actually has a sliding scale, which is new, something they've not done until recently, as in like this year. If we add more than, I believe, 5 students, the cost goes down, and if we had more than 10, the cost goes down as well. So like if we have a student who says, I'm not going to Franklin, I'm going to Muskego, and they have space, right, that state aid goes to Muskego. In this case, it's not state aid, it's our money going to GPS to pay for that student's placement in that program. So it's more of a tuition cost than it is state aid, but the number is fairly similar. And $6,500 is, again, less than $7,300.97, whatever it is, but it's a similar number to start.
Okay, I only have one more question. The
Yep.
class time is at Alice Roller, it's not in our school district?
Correct. So Alice Roller, right in our Franklin Business Park, is the classroom site. So when I'm there in a couple weeks for a business park consortium meeting, we're right next door to their classroom. I mean, literally, we're in the board meeting right next door. So if you walk in Alice Roller, go up the stairs, you can see the classroom. Not many students work in Alice Roller, right? Then students, right now they have juniors, their class time is in the morning, their work time is in the afternoon. Seniors, that's flipped. They go to work to start, and then they come to school in the afternoon. There are some students still who participate in athletics activities at their home school. When I was last there, and Ms. Delassis and I were just there last week, there's students from Muskego, Union Grove, a variety, Waterford, who've not, sorry, I feel like I'm cutting out, have not been successful in their home school, and they're still able to get in and participate in this program. And when students shared kind of what appeals to them, again, it was students who, for one reason or another, were not successful in a traditional high school program. They may have had attendance issues, they were credit deficient, right? And this is an opportunity where now they feel connected to this small group. And they all went to work in the afternoon and were pretty excited about their job. And they really try to find a student and get a good fit in terms of that employability piece based on your skills and what your interest is. So each employer has students walk through probably a rotation of, different facets of a business, right? Just like any other job maybe. And they try to really match a student with a good fit. And if it doesn't work, then they come back and say, all right, this placement's not great, but let's get you a job that does fit your talents and interests. So one student was really excited about welding. Another student worked in shipping and receiving. So he was on the dock every day in a business. And he was excited about that. He loved it. He said his biggest issue was learning to communicate with people who don't always speak the same language he does. So he said he's learning every day a little bit more about, communicating with people who English isn't their primary language. So it's an exciting, different piece. And again, the number of businesses, Crohn's, Alice Roller, there's several right in our business park, and there's several, beyond as well. So the farthest a student comes right now to school to go to Alice Roller for the classroom is about a 35-minute drive. And our students obviously wouldn't have that much of a drive in terms of transportation.
So then, they're still part of our enrollment.
Correct.
So what is that payment based on? Is it, they're not a charter school, they're not they're just a private school?
They're a
So
nonprofit.
it's public funds going to private school?
They're a nonprofit organization whose entire existence is to help students succeed and complete high school in their local school district. So GPS is not a school, public or private. It's not a charter. It's just a program that offers this support to get students through their local high school requirements, right, in a different way. So if a student was, in Menominee Falls, my home district, and they went to Brady Corp for their education center, or Germantown, or one of our neighboring districts, they're still a student of that school district, right? And the money goes into that nonprofit's thing to pay the expense of the 2 teachers at the education center, right? And those different pieces that go along with doing this at these different levels. So their financials and whatnot, they are not a school, nor do they earn profit, right? They're a nonprofit that supports this program and these pathways for these different students throughout the state, in this case, specifically for us, right here in Franklin at Alice Roller.
But we send them. They couldn't independently
No,
sign
correct.
up. We send them.
Correct. A student has to be,
Placed by
Yep.
Franklin.
they cannot go independent of their school support, and a student would need to be a resident of a participating school district in order to go to this program. A student cannot independently go from, let's say, South Milwaukee, who's not a participant right now at GPS. They can't say, I'm going to this program, I'm going to be at, this education site. They'd have to be enrolled in a school district that participates, and have that school district support their participation as part of, their academic career planning and support.
So they could open a row in Franklin and then access the program also.
Well, if we had open enrollment seats, and then if it was a deemed fit for us as a school district, as a school, for the student to go there. Similarly to Envision, we don't make placements sort of lightly. It's a conversation around academic career planning and that student's success and all the interventions that go along with that. So we wouldn't, and we do not typically just place a student based on their wants and needs, whether it's Connects, Envision, or something like GPS. It really is a collaborative thing between family, student, and school district, because we know that it takes all of us to make this a success. And it's not a unilateral choice for any of the parties. We wouldn't force a student to go there, nor would we have a student just say, I'm going to this place.
So how many of them are employed at their business after they graduate?
I believe, so like 90% persist through the program typically. And by that I mean like come back. So the on-ramp is either you're a new junior and you're in the program for your junior and senior year, you're a second semester junior, or you're a senior. So those are the students that are able to participate. To that end, about 90% of the students who start in the program finish in the program. I believe 70% of the students do wind up getting some sort of post-secondary placement, and are able to, if they want, continue with employment in their place. That being said, I believe, and again, the percentages I can't recall off 100%, I think it's more between a third and about 40% who actually stay with their employer, but most have the opportunity to do so if they so choose. But again, many of the students may choose to go to post-secondary education, a tech school, a trade, or get employed elsewhere. And one of the networking pieces of GPS, just keep in mind that all the different GPS partners throughout southeastern Wisconsin, not just in the south suburban area, employers like Harley-Davidson, you can go north to Hartford and find different employers. So the school districts that participate, and even the employers that participate, if there's not a fit with the place you've been, there may be a fit with one of the other partners. And there is some networking that goes with this, where the students who do well and persist and complete it, have more than just one connection. It's not just that one place when it's all said and done.
So we have one more course to approve?
Yes,
to go on to?
we have the Dual Enrollment Academies and the Special Ed course this evening.
Oh,
So Mr. Volo actually has the next, and we'll transition to the Dual Enrollment Academies to speak to that.
So last year, you may recall, and thank you, Mr. Reuter, for reminding of the dual enrollment academies that we approved last year, of which we have 5 students participating this year. You may recall that dual enrollment academies really are a more robust and intentional version of what now is called the Start College Now program. And following these course presentations, there will be an early college credit and Start College Now presentation. And by that, I mean the state of Wisconsin allows students to participate in courses at the local tech school or local university. So the reason I mention this in tandem with that is, these students have, right, by statute, the ability to take these courses off campus. And we also know that some of the courses they want to take are not as intentionally aligned to a career pathway or a job the way we might like. So a dual enrollment academy really has a specific outcome and sequence of courses a student cannot help but be participating in. So last year when we added practical nursing, information technology, and welding, we were offering students a chance to, rather than take some random Start College Now or early college credit courses, participate in a very intentional, pretty much full-time experience at MATC for their senior year, wherein they ended very, very, very much ready for whatever's next. The practical nursing, they can go on and continue their schooling or work immediately, right? Welding, same sort of piece, everything transfers easily. They walk out with credentials, right? All those pieces are what makes us very intentional and supportive. What I'm asking for this year is to add emergency medical services, right, which is a program offered again through MATC's South Campus in Oak Creek, and a culinary and baking dual enrollment academy, which both would result in some additional certifications, but help students who have taken things on campus but really are excited about this next level, have a very intentional senior year experience. And again, it must be seniors, wherein we pay for 18 credits, which is the same thing we do for Start College Now or early college credit, but they result in a more robust, intentional, aligned to a career experience. Right? It's not a random, I want to take this course or that course. It's a very specific experience for students who, have the chance to do it. And I think it's the right thing to do for our students to help them be more career and life ready, especially when they have this passion to do it. And right now, we don't have something like an emergency medical, pathway on campus. We don't have something like that. But to have a student say, I want to be an EMT, and this is going to help me get there, or maybe I want to go and be a first responder when it comes to being a fireman or a policeman. I mean, this is giving a student a huge leap up. So it also ties into, again, what we currently do with Start College Now. Only, again, the approval of these additional pathways allows us to say yes to students who have this desire and want this experience for their senior year.
Thanks, Mr. Vole. We'll transition to Ms. Preeman for our final course presentation this evening.
I'm like the dessert.
Yes.
So we're proposing a new course called Literacy Essentials. There's one for grades 9, 10, and another one for grades 11, 12. Most students with disabilities participate in the general education program with their peers, but we do need to offer a continuum of service options for students that have more significant needs that may necessitate a different pace, different materials, and things that can't be accommodated in the general education classroom. So Literacy Essentials was designed in response to offer students with disabilities a class that increases rigor and relevance. It mirrors that of their peers, but it's done in a smaller environment with fewer students and is specifically designed and tailored to their needs. Students would enroll in this course through placement by the IEP team. So, any questions? Okay. I'd like to just take a moment, though, to thank Judy Mrachkowski for her leadership in this area. She did a lot of work in designing this course for our students.
Thank you. Okay, were there any questions?
How many students are you expecting in here?
It's hard to say. I would imagine that it would be a rather small number of students. I think combined, probably between the two courses, maybe 8 students in total.
Oh, 8 students in total?
So those are the courses and programming we're bringing to you tonight and recommending for the start of the fall of the 1920 school year to be in place.
Just just like to ask a point of clarification. Are we eliminating courses at the high school?
The one course that I can't speak to special ed, but the one regular ed course that's being eliminated is metals manufacturing, so metals 3.
Which is denoted in the memo under the manufacturing course, the elimination of the
Okay.
existing course.
So do we have to mention that in the motion? I kind of went over with you the suggested motion, but do you want me to say?
I think you should include in the motion the elimination of that course. So we can just put that on the end.
The elimination of metal.
What was the name of the course?
It's metals manufacturing. It's course 6360.
Okay. I plan on suggesting a motion here, but in light of the fact that it's going to be one large motion, I do want to ask, is there any course that any board member would like to remove that if you don't plan on approving something, do you want to remove it from the motion so that we could, instead of just voting up or down on something? So is there any board member that would like to remove a course from a broad motion to vote separately? Because otherwise I'm going to read the motion. I'm looking for a motion to approve the new Forest Park programming, the new Sabre manufacturing courses, the Sabre Academy alternative program, the GPS program, the dual enrollment courses, and the addition of the Literacy Essentials course for students identified through the IEP process in special education, with the elimination of the metals manufacturing course. Do I hear that motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Larson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Witkowski. Is there any discussion?
So will there be, this is a lot that we're implementing. Will there be a report coming back on, what was successful, what wasn't, and?
Yeah, as you heard in each presentation, I'm sure Mrs. King will be brought back multiple times next year to talk about the progress of the middle school, not only academically, but structurally, and talking about the great opportunity there, as well as we mentioned that we'd like to bring the Envision team back to talk about the success of that program as we guide that new vision of programming. So yes, we can build those into instruction reports in the future.
And also, these are approved subject to minimum numbers, right? We have policies on minimum numbers. We're not holding a class.
Right. So we do have policy on that with regard to class size.
And these can all be implemented without additional staff, or?
Based on enrollment, staffing drives the courses, as I've discussed with a few of you in the last week, and we made a light to this evening. Ms. Elias, and you can join in at any time, but students sign up for courses at the middle and high school level that are elective-based, and whether or not, based on class size policy, they run or not, that drives the staffing needs in those areas.
But certainly as we expand opportunities for children at Forest Park, there will be an increase in staffing in order to accommodate that, as you expected when that was designed.
Because currently, as Ms. King alluded to, art, music, and physical education are the only encore courses currently at 6th grade. As we transition students to that new building, and you saw the 6th grade courses in the encore area, there's more variety and choice.
So there definitely will be additional teachers then required.
In those encore areas, yes.
Yes.
So we don't currently offer them to sixth
Right,
graders,
just-
so
I think it's
now that we are, yes, that would be the case.
Have we, any idea how many?
No, not until we're able to actually have the students select from the offerings, place them into schedules, see how those sections fall into place. I wouldn't be able to predict that with any level of accuracy right now.
But more than 0?
More than 0.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, we have a motion by Mrs. Larson, a second by Mrs. Witkowski. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you for everyone who presented. Okay. All right. Moving on to item 8B, 8C, early college credit and start college. Now request approvals, Mr. Volo.
All right, thank you, and I trust that everyone has been able to see the requests this year for the early college credit and Start College Now programs. As you recall, the early college credit and Start College Now programs replaced youth options as of last year via this last spring, excuse me, via the latest state legislature. And what we're looking at here is we have 6 different students have requested through early college credit to attend a 4-year university, or through Start College Now to attend a tech school, in this case MATC or WCTC. So we've determined based on the guidelines that these courses are not comparable to things that we offer, and that these students would be eligible to take the courses under the provisions of those programs for the spring semester. Therefore, we are recommending that the board approve those requests.
So I'm looking for a motion to approve the early college credit and Start College Now, I can't say that today, request approvals. Do I hear that motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Larson, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gamble. Is there any discussion?
How much did we spend last semester on courses?
I didn't total it. I could probably figure that out, but I don't have that number.
Because this is just a menu. These aren't necessarily all going to be taken.
Correct. So the students, as you may notice, that students request more courses than they can take or will take. So for example, one student requesting to take half a dozen courses, they do so because they select courses they truly want as well as alternates. And then they also have to fit those into their school schedule. So that means they're going to have to lose things, and they still have to graduate from Franklin Public School, so there may not be a match between the course catalog and offerings on campus and that which they want to take, off campus. And so like those things don't always fit. And in some cases, a student has a specific thing they want to take at a 4-year university. They still have to be admitted as a student in that university, so there are some requirements there. But again, making it fit is one of the largest things, and knowing that, for example, the first request, having those higher level math classes, I'm fairly certain the student will make that work because that student's done that for the last several years because they've outpaced our math curriculum, I believe, for about 2.5 years.
I do want to say, I'm really, with 2 students applying for the elements of speech, 2 different students, and I looked over our courses. I was really surprised that we have so many writing courses, and you almost have to just take forensics in order to get anything with public speaking, and public speaking is so important now, especially with the technology, that I really think we should consider a course on speech for the future. So unless I'm missing a course we have in the high school level that I didn't see.
We do integrate speech into our existing English courses that are required in the core. So as previously, perhaps, like when I was I think it was when I was a freshman or sophomore, we took speech for a semester, then lit and comp for a semester. Those are integrated for our students. They do both within a course in terms of like that standalone. What you are alluding to, I do believe there's an opportunity for us to explore additional things, not just in our courses, but even at a more rigorous level, as we look at dual credit, transcripted credit, and having it happen on our campus. Right? We do not have these courses on our campus, and like you said, if we have staff who could be credentialed to teach it, there's opportunities there we could explore. So I think there's a need that we currently aren't meeting, as is evident by the students wanting to take these courses at these universities.
Yeah. Any other discussion?
And how much, did you tell me how much we spent last year on this?
I didn't have a total for the entire year or the semester. It's about $150 a credit. If you give me a second, I could probably find how many students
I think
are.
that's something you have to ask ahead of time in the future. Yeah.
Because the state doesn't give us any money for this, right?
Well, no, the state does for the early college credit program reimburse, I believe it's up to 25% of the cost of the tuition, but that's based on a pot of money that I believe gets parsed out based on how many selections there are across the state. So it's hard to say how much exactly that is. Per credit, I believe it's about $150 a credit, which is still a deal comparatively because the statute, I believe, demands that the universities take less per credit than they would for a typical undergrad student.
Do we need a roll call on this, Mrs. Zukowski?
No, I just wanted the information.
Okay. I'm just wondering. Okay, we have a motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bowen. So we have item 8D, the enrollment and staffing report. Mrs. Elhausen.
Okay. Good evening. As I go through tonight's presentation, I'm going to ask you to kind of think back to October of last year, because you're going to hear some similarities to where we are. Did something just fly across the screen? You're going to hear some similarities to where we are today, and I will kind of refresh some of those as well. This is our third Friday enrollment over time. You can see that we sit 9 students up over last year, and almost 300 students up over the course of that 7-year time frame. So we clearly have an upward enrollment trend in our district, which is a really good thing for us, a great problem, as we have more students in our district. Elementary is represented here, and again, the same time frame, and you see that growth, although not as linear. In this example, it is 130 students over the course of that time span in the graph here. In the next representation, you see our schools represented. They do have fairly stable enrollment over the 3-year look on this particular graph. Robinwood is our largest school at around 550 students. Countrydale behind at 520. PV sits at 480, and Southwood Glen and Ben Franklin, they sit right around that 370 mark for students. So very stable, very consistent enrollment in total numbers, but you can certainly see Robinwood grow over those 3 years, and some go up and down.
Just a question. Are all our building size similarly 500 capacity, or are they smaller capacity than Franklin, Southwood Glen?
Different capacities,
Different, lower? Okay.
especially Southwood Glen.
This represents the middle school, which, as it sits today, has 2 grade spans, and so you would expect that this have varied fluctuation like you see on this chart, as each class, when I get to that chart, you'll see has different representation of numbers, so they will wax and wane typically. And here's our high school enrollment over that same time frame, and again, it's about 130 students over the 7-year period that's represented here. So growth in that area as well. This is that grade level enrollment graph I was just referencing prior, where again you see variation in numbers, although certain stability and an upward trend line. As I spoke last year, I referenced that lower primary is a area to watch. We talked last year about the fact that birth rates are reduced. 2016 was the lowest year on record, according to the National Center on Health Statistics. So we would expect to see continued numbers in that lower area as you see in K through 3 right now. Certainly our kindergarten class, as it stands today, is the lowest grade level number. So again, we have an upward trend line. We watch those lower primary numbers to be sure that we are cognizant of them as we look at our system as a whole, from student instruction standpoint as well as fiscal. Our open enrollment is very stable and controlled. We monitor that pretty closely. We watch the grade levels that can accommodate, and we, as you know, in January, you approve a number of seats for our open enrollment capacity. At the end there, 4K and the new middle school will positively impact our system. And so we'll have a new kind of presentation next year that will incorporate in particularly 4K. And the middle school certainly is a great asset for us to have as a district from a viability standpoint for families that want to move into our community. So I'll move into the staffing review. This is the look at the middle school, or the middle schools, excuse me, the elementary schools, each of them represented by a color, and where their average enrollment sits for their school, and then the box at the bottom there represents the average of that grade level overall. So you can see our K, right, that 21 represents, we have an average class size of 21 in kindergarten, 21.5 to be exact, and then how that kind of represents out at each school. We certainly have some spikes in certain grade levels, and as you know, when you have 2 or 3 sections, sometimes that's not easy to accommodate, so you have some larger class sizes, in which case we put additional support to those areas that we work through with the principal to make sure that we are maximizing what those students need in the classroom. In terms of our non-certified staff, this is our hire, although I would tell you we are not finished. We continue to hire in this area. We still have openings. We always look at the overall staffing levels, and sometimes just depending upon what the students need in special education, we have ads in that area. So once again, in that area, we have additional support through educational assistance. We have some additional supervisory aides, particularly focused in areas of safety, in cafeterias, recess, hall supervision, wherever that might be in the buildings to ensure student safety. I would tell you they're all hard to fill. There is no one area that is easy to fill, not even a regular education aide, in terms of our current labor pools and where we sit in the market. So, and the reasons for attrition vary, but for the most part, as you know, these are fairly part-time positions, part school year, not full year positions, so oftentimes we see folks transition for more hours, benefits, that type of thing. In our teaching staff, let me back up just to share some context. If you looked at last year's presentation, that hired was around 18. So it is significantly more than last year when you look at the percentage of the whole. And some of that comes from new in ads, but a lot of it does come from that churn or turnover that occurs in the market today. And that's not unusual for Franklin. That's common across schools, as well as other industries that I'm sure you are aware of. And then lastly, this is the certified staff. We have 36 hired. We're almost done. We have a couple late resignations here, but for the most part, we are finished hiring in the certified staff area. You recognized last meeting some of the new positions as we did the budget in terms of elementary some of the exploratory or encore areas, and then the interventionist positions. Again, I would tell you all of these are hard to fill. Sometimes it depends on the timing. Teacher hiring is very cyclical. So if we're into season early and we hit market early, we can fill some of our positions a lot easier. But again, this is an area of shortage and an area of need. I know that you're aware of that. We talked about that as you looked at some of the school board resolutions that went forth in terms of work in this area. And this past year, our top reasons for attrition were to be closer to where they are from a home standpoint, in the regional area, and relocation. So I'd entertain any questions you have on where we sit today.
How many retirees did we have? Was it of certified staff?
4 or 5. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I think I have the next one too. Oh, I don't have to present it, thank you.
Item 8E is the school calendar for 2019-20. Mrs. Ellenhausen, yes.
So in your board package, you have a copy of the calendar as it's been designed, as well as a memo that outlines the factors that we take into consideration when we carefully craft a calendar. And so our 3 areas are maximizing student instruction, engagement, optimizing professional development or learning for our staff, and then supporting the needs of our parents and our community when we look at the design of the calendar. So taking all, and then of course there are legal requirements around the calendar as well. So taking all of those things into account, we try to find the best balance. All of those areas have competing interests, but at the same time, and all well-intentioned, at the same time, we work to make sure those 3 are in balance as best as possible. I summarize some of the calendar changes that are in the design for the 1920 calendar. It does follow, though, a very similar pattern to this year's calendar. So again, we would have some, and I'll start. Let me just start with the student focus. It's the same number of days in terms of how many days our students come to school. We start on September 3rd, which is a legal requirement there, and then we would end for students with a half day on June 9. In terms of the professional development focus, what we looked at this year was the days prior to the start of the school year in order to really continue to set that solid foundation, especially as we move into the second year of the coherence planning work and really continue to capitalize on the momentum and the work done by our schools and staff in those areas. So we would continue with days prior to the start of the school year. And I'm just going to flip for a minute and bring your attention to the end of the school year. We set a day there, and we set a day there very intentionally so that our staff could work to look backwards as to what work has been accomplished, where they have successes, look at those outcomes, and then prioritize the work for the next school year. So there's a day there after students are dismissed in June. And then we created a balance of professional development in the first semester and second semester with 2 in each of those areas. And then the parental focus, we really tried to put breaks, and that includes those professional development days, where it would be family-friendly. So you see some breaks with students that would not report on Fridays. You have your winter break in there. Then you see that long break in February, and I'll back up just a hair. In January, we have MLK Day. They're represented as the work day. The long break in February. Spring break remains in that fixed pattern for us into the second year, with it being the week of March 23rd. and many districts are moving there. Not all of them, but Dr. Miller works with the CISA 1 superintendents, and they have collectively agreed that that's really where they desire to be. And so more and more districts are, over the course of the calendars that they're creating, whether it's this year or the ensuing years, placing it into that fixed pattern when possible. And then in April, we have the break around Easter there, as well as Memorial Day, and then the close of the school year. So I'd entertain any questions you would have around the calendar, any clarification you need.
On the board side of things, I just want to mention for the future, for 2020 and on, when we plan our board calendar, we have to keep in mind the March, having the break then, that our board meeting falls during that time, so we might have to have back-to-back meetings then, and then also keep in mind the national conference, which is usually in April, but could fall then, so we always have to keep that in mind. And then I just want to ask, how is staff feeling about the March break? Is it are they receptive to it?
Well, we haven't had it yet, so it's
Well,
coming.
I mean,
In this year, it's hard to say because staff live in such a diverse zip code. So for some, it aligns depending upon where their district is, and for others, it's still different. So again, I think that there is a great cooperation of the CISA 1 superintendents to really try to make this happen.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, item 8F, the treasurer's report, is available in the board docs library. And then we'll move on to item 9, school board liaison reports. We have personnel and policy. Mr. Nielsen, who's not here, did go over the policies with Dr. Miller. So Dr. Miller, if we can do policy 6312, student promotion and retention.
Right.
First.
So this is a policy that was on our list because of its date. We're at a point now where we're looking at policies that are like 5 years out, so that's really good. There wasn't a lot of changes to the policy other than we no longer use a collaborative support team. We use a response to intervention team. So that was essentially all we really needed to change in this policy. So I would ask the board to move to accept that change, and we'll redate the policy with today's date.
So I'm looking for a motion to approve the revision of policy 6312.
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Larson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Witkowski. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then we will move on to policy 6731, field trips and extended travel. Dr. Miller.
Okay. So again, this is a policy that was last reviewed in 2010, so it's time to take a look at this policy as well. Some of the changes made to this policy make it more clear what we identify as school-sponsored trips. It clarifies further when our students can take trips at the end of the school year. And now that we have sixth graders at the middle school, the last class at the elementary level is fifth grade, so that language had to be updated. Within the rules, there are just a couple of changes there. We added some language about a reasonable expectation for the financial costs of these trips be considered. The costs of some of these trips get pretty expensive, and there should be some consideration given to how much these trips cost. So that was language that was added. And then with regard to the approvals itself, there was language added that relates to the due date of the first deposit or 90 days, whichever comes first, because that did cause a bit of a hardship in terms of scheduling. So Mr. Nielsen was very much involved in a number of the revisions and thoughts. Ms. Evans also saw them as well. So I would ask that the board approve the revisions to this policy this evening as presented.
Before we entertain a motion, I just want to make a couple comments because I just want to point out to the board that in 2010, I think you mentioned in 2010, we revised this.
Yep.
Yeah. It used to be, prior to that, trips outside the 150-mile radius were for students in grades 8 to 12. And then we did revise it to 6 to 12. Or, yeah, 6 to 12. And trips have gotten quite expensive. Some of the trips are, for middle school students, are over $2,000 to take a trip. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but that really bothers me that students are spending so much money in middle school on trips. And, I mean, it's a choice that a student's family has to make to spend that much money, but in middle school, you could still spend time with your family going on a family trip, where a family could spend that much money together to go on a trip, rather than having to burden a family to go, oh, I have to have my child go on a class trip, in the summer or something, and they might feel pressured to go on this trip. So, I mean, that's just my feeling, that maybe 8th grade students going to Washington, that might be an important trip. But, and by the way, these trips used to come to the board to get approved every time a Washington trip. I happened to find from my board packet back then, the Washington trip would come to the board every time, and we haven't seen a trip come here for a science trip or a Washington trip to be approved since 2010. So I don't understand why they don't come here, but I sure would like to see us go back to maybe just having 8th grade and up be approved for these extended trips. But that's my feeling, so I'm not going to vote to approve this. It's up to the rest of the board if they want to approve it for 6th graders going on an extended trip and having to incur that cost. And that's just my feeling, so.
So why didn't we get?
So the way that, if you look at the rules, only trips leaving the continental U.S. require board approval. So if you travel 150 miles, you don't need board approval for that. So kids who might go to Minnesota or Chicago or Illinois somewhere, Chicago would be more, but that doesn't require board approval. So going 150 miles didn't require board approval. When those trips came about, the teachers brought them to the board to make you aware of them. And then in 2010, the board said, yeah, we'll approve the trip to Washington, D.C. and the trip to Florida. And then following that, the board revised their policy to say you can take these trips in 7th and 8th grade, actually 6th through 12th. So there's a little bit of history behind it. In terms of why we are where we are, but they haven't come to the board because there wasn't a requirement that they do, because they're not out of the country trips. They're still extended travel trips, and they need to follow these protocols, but they didn't require board approval. And I'm not certain the board would want to have board approval for every trip that's 150 miles away, because we have athletic teams traveling 150 miles away, so.
That's a difference, if you have like future cities, you get an award as a class and you want to go on a trip for that, that's related to, a school project or athletics or things like that. But, like a science trip, we have plenty of bus trips you can take without having hotels and an airline flight to go. We have so many places in Wisconsin or Chicago that you can go on a science trip, that you don't have to have a 6th grade or 7th grade student go to, out of state to go on a science trip, and where maybe the rest of the class can't go because of over $2,000. That's just how I feel. But an 8th grade student to go to Washington, that's something you can plan for and look forward to. I don't know. But anyway.
So what kind of participation are we getting for Washington and the science trips? How many
Ms.
people
King's
are we
here,
talking
she may be able to respond to that.
They've grown quite a bit, and we've gone back and forth of, is this a school-sponsored trip or not a school-sponsored trip? Because they work through Great Strides, I believe it is, so it's this company that helps partner that you guys probably know better than I from 2010 of how that all came about. But the Washington DC one continues to grow, more so than the Florida one, but that one is, I believe we had over 150, close to maybe 170 go on this last trip.
And that's during the academic year.
Washington DC is during the academic year, and Florida is after the end of the school year. So it's technically during summer vacation.
So how many go to Washington DC roughly?
About 150.
Okay, same thing for Florida?
Florida's been a little bit smaller, but also growing. Yeah.
Okay.
And DC is over spring break, or?
It's during the school year. It's a Friday to Monday trip.
They're back. They miss one day of school, and they're back on the Monday.
So looking at attendance, 150 is 50% of the kids going?
It's both 7th and 8th grade, though.
Okay.
So 7th and 8th grade are open to it, but it is definitely something to talk about because they start planning it early, because it does take some time to plan.
Yeah, January is the beginning time frame for publicity for that trip.
So it's open 7th and 8th graders, all right?
Correct.
So that they typically go 1 year, they don't go 2 years, or?
Some families do send their kids both years. Other families do one, some families do none.
It's an option for families, and there's certainly enough families that are sending their children to do these things. It'd be very difficult, I think, to not allow it without having some discussion with those families.
I've been in DC and seen the crowds go through. You always want to avoid any kind of school group in your hotel, anywhere.
We're sending them there. The key, though, is whatever the trip is, it has to have a tie to the current curriculum. So that has to be evaluated every single time that
I
it's.
think to Janet's point, though, is that there's lower cost alternatives that don't seem to be considered. I think that's the point.
Yeah.
So
I think
we're
the
missing
Washington-
out, kids are missing out on opportunities that are more affordable. That would,
I
Give them the
can't,
same
I
experience.
think we could, inquire with our science staff with regard to what trips they currently take. They're not top of mind for me right now.
right.
I'm
but
sorry about
could we-
that.
I mean, it's approved by a building principal, right? Or we're changing this to say reasonable expectations for financial costs must be considered and approved by the building. We made that change here. Can we add a guideline that local experiences should also be offered? Not just
I
one?
think there's a reference to it in here. I'd have to look that. I don't
But a
remember.
comparable experience to the Washington DC trip should be offered as an alternative, perhaps.
Madison? Do the
Yeah.
fourth graders go to
Fourth
Madison?
graders go because it's
Sure.
tied to the
Yeah.
curriculum of state government and
That's what I
and
thought.
state study
Yeah.
for social studies standards.
There's a science museum in Madison, and there's a,
Yeah.
There's a-
Field trips shall provide learning experiences that cannot be provided in school in another format, such as bringing a speaker to the classroom or through the use of technology. So I think there's some effort to, provide those experiences internally as well, so.
No, I don't mean just internally. I mean, it can be an outside the school experience, but doesn't have to be in Florida or DC.
Right.
So, parents, you can go to DC or you can go to Madison.
Yeah. It depends on what they're, what it is that they're doing with the trip, right? So
Right, but,
study sea life in the area would be difficult.
so do
you
you,
have a big lake out there?
It's not sea life, it's lake life.
Water life?
So,
So we have sixth graders going to middle school next year. Do you want them going to Florida? That's in this policy now. I don't know.
I'm not sure that's a decision that we want to take away from a parent. I think a decision like that is a parent's decision, whether they want their sixth grader, their 12-year-old to go to Florida. I don't think that we should take that opportunity away flatly from everyone. I agree with you. I do agree with you. I think that the first time I heard about the middle school Florida trip, I voted against it. That was many years ago, because I thought it was too pricey then. But I also don't think we should take the opportunity away because you and I feel that way, or some of us feel that way. I think we have to leave that opportunity open for parents to make that decision. We have to make parents responsible for their children in those decisions.
and ultimately, you know, the staff that's responsible for a 12-year-old may not want to take that on. And frankly, I'd be very concerned about taking 12-year-olds on a trip like that. And I would express that concern because of the supervision and the maturity level of someone at that age level. So I'm not saying it wouldn't happen, but it would be viewed very differently, I think, if they wanted to take the sixth grade.
I have a question regarding chaperones. I don't think I saw it in here. Are chaperones who are both employees of our district and other chaperones, are they allowed to bring their own children with them on these trips?
I have not heard that that would be allowed. So I don't know. I'd have to find out for sure. I haven't heard that that would be allowed. Certainly not addressed in here.
Is
but I'd
that
have
something we want to
investigate
address,
that.
though? I guess is my question, because I don't see anything regarding that either.
No. Okay. Well, you know, it would be something in the administrative rules to discuss with the administrators and the people responsible for the trips. Certainly, that we can do that. I'll make a note. So allowing siblings to attend with a chaperone.
Well, not even necessarily a sibling, just another child, a chaperone's child. So in other words, I'm the Franklin employee, and I have a younger child, and I'm going on a trip with
Okay, the employee. I was
seventh
thinking,
graders, and I bring my child along, who is not a seventh grader.
okay, I was thinking parent chaperone.
Or parent, either way, yeah.
Okay, I got it. All right, we'll definitely have some discussion around that.
And then there was one item in here about students, you know, how a student that just graduated can return and go on an extended trip. But then there was one that former students can go also. A former student, I think it was in the administrative rules, a former student would get a background check just like a volunteer, correct?
Yeah, I can make a note of that, yes. And I remember that with the Japanese trip. Do you remember that? Yeah. Okay. I'll add background check information on that.
So if no one agrees with me then on any of that, then I guess we're looking for a motion then to approve.
Didn't we just bring up a few items that we're going to discuss?
Well, I brought up items, so if anyone wants to.
No, but as Judy's making notes, like your issue about bringing a child along.
That was administrative rules. So that, we don't
okay.
approve that, yeah.
I can report back
What
to
was
the
your
board on the
concern
rules.
again? Because we've talked about so much.
Yeah, what would you propose a change somewhere?
To the
I was
policy.
proposing a change to
You
not
said-
allow, I was trying to get some more consensus to change it to eighth grade and up.
For beyond the 150.
Yeah, or even change the 150 a little bit, but, you know, I'm not so thrilled about 6th and 7th graders, especially 6th graders, but that's what I was looking for.
So you would recommend on item 5, only to students in grades 8 to 12? Is that what you're?
That's what I was looking for,
suggesting?
but,
Well, that's the rules. So if this is something the board wants to make policy on, then it would go on in policy.
I was looking for it in policy.
It would have to be placed in policy. If that's something that, as a board, you would want, that would go in policy, that would come out of rules. I do think that the 7th grade students could benefit from these trips as well.
And the Washington DC trip is a direct connection to 7th grade social studies curriculum, not 8th grade, even though 8th graders do attend if they do elect to go dual years or just the 8th grade year.
Is this a policy you want to bring back when we have a full board here for discussion?
Well, I think that it's time sensitive in terms of the trips that they're planning. We probably need to get it done. But we certainly can bring it. If the board wants that, then they'll have to wait with their
Not necessarily, I mean, the majority here is a majority right now, but, I mean, it's just,
You're essentially leaving it to the discretion of the administration to decide 6 through 12, unless you change your policy. It is at our discretion to decide that.
And you're feeling that's correct, 6 to 12 is what?
I think because 6th grade is part of the middle school, it's correct. I think it may be rare that 6th graders would go. I can't foresee that happening, but I wouldn't say it would never happen.
Because our policy at this point doesn't talk about any kind of limitations on which grades are eligible. We could send first graders if we wanted to. I mean, you could under this policy.
Well, the rules clarify it. Yeah, the rules clarify how we're going to.
Oh, the rules, yeah, that's right, the administration could.
well, if someone wants to make a motion, you can make a motion.
I make the motion to approve policy, I'm sorry, I lost the number, 63, or 6731 with the advised, the advised revisions.
I'll second.
Oh, and you said revised revisions, the ones that, in those you took?
As revised.
Oh,
As revised.
So we have a motion by Mrs. Larson, second by Mr. Alexandrovich. Any further discussion?
Is there ever any consideration for alternative, less costly trips? Like, we're offering A and B, you can choose. Or it's always just A?
I don't know all the field trips that they take at the middle school.
Well, I'm just saying, could you have that,
Yeah.
some kind of consideration that when you're planning the big trip, that you have an alternative?
There are other trips that take place at the middle school level during the academic year. The only, of the 2 trips in question this evening, one of them is during the academic year, which is the Washington DC trip, and the Florida trip is during the end of June, if I'm correct, middle of June, the week after school gets out. So both are voluntary. All field trips are voluntary, but there's a science field trip at the 8th grade level to Madison that 99.9% of students participate in. There are other 7th grade field trips.
Discovery World, end of the year celebration field trips to Great America for 8th grade, 7th grade does things. So these are those above and beyond experiences for kids that were offered and brought to you guys in 2010 through the Great Strides programs. And if I'm correct, it really came to be because our area community schools were really starting to provide these opportunities, and Franklin Community
Both of these trips are pretty well stapled trips in CISA 1 region school districts. I believe Dr. Dezork brought these here from Greendale, that their middle school engaged in these. I'm not advocating for, I'm just kind of giving some historical
right.
background. My stepson is in 8th grade. Last year, he had the chance to go to Washington, D.C. as a 7th grader. Now as an 8th grader, he has the same Florida trip. It's kind of a conglomerate. It's to Mrs. King's point, above and beyond what we locally do within our school day. Is an opportunity.
And to Ms. Larson's point, it's the parents' choice. It's what they choose to do.
And I'm just saying, give parents another choice. You know, instead of $2,000, I want to spend $500. What can you do for $500? I don't know. I'm just saying, more choice for parents. I agree that it's no or no, yes or no on 2,000, but are there other, when you're putting, I don't know how those came to be, but are there other considerations for less costly trips?
I was going to say this.
We have 2 teachers that have been the gatekeepers of these trips over the last 8 years. That it's a lot of work, yes.
It's time intensive. It really is, to plan another trip and to make all of those arrangements and calling buses and making sure everyone is safe and their tummies are filled and I mean, it's time intensive. It really is.
Well, I want to bring out our value of equity here, you know? We're only offering the highest end without any consideration for other levels. So I don't know how to make it happen, but we're not meeting, you know, we're not really looking at equity across all income levels here. We're not. We're excluding people. So, I don't know, let's just eliminate them, not have them.
Okay.
It really does not address equity. It's just blatant. I don't know have the answer, but I just want to put the question out there.
Okay.
Could have the board pay for all trips. Do you want to do that? For all children?
Just a second, I'll tell you.
I just,
Guess nobody's
Well,
going
I
to.
mean, you know, unfortunately, you're right. You're right. But some of that equity, I think, is made up throughout the school year in the other trips that the children go on. They're getting other experiences in those other trips that they may not actually ever get to have with their own family. And it could be something as simple as going to Discovery World. You know, some kids would never get to Discovery World if they didn't go with their
Right.
school
I know,
or see a farm.
yeah.
You
I
know?
think parents should take their kids to DC. We don't need those hordes of kids descending upon the, personally. It's kind of a crowd experience as opposed to
Seriously, they could get that in Chicago.
I took my kids to DC, and right, I remember the awe of like, is this the capital of the United States? So, it's important, yes, I agree it's important, but maybe parents should just take their kids.
Okay. We have a roll call, please.
Really?
Really?
Okay. Mrs. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. Gamble.
Aye.
Mrs. Evans.
No.
Mrs. Witkowski.
Aye.
And I say yes.
Okay. Motion carries. 4 aye, 1 no. 2 absent.
You could have amended it, we could have discussed an amendment. But, okay, moving on.
No. Just, I said I wasn't going to vote for it. Okay. Quickly. See,
Good.
policy 5121, early entrance to kindergarten.
All right, so we have 4K coming, so it was essential that we updated this policy with regard to 4-year-old kindergarten and the entrance requirements. So in the policy, you'll see the actual statute and what it states about early entrance. You'll note that we are not allowing early entrance of any 4-year-olds into the program. We're recommending that as policy for the district. Many of the other changes just kind of help clarify 4-year-old from 5-year-old. I won't go through them. You've had time to see this. Interest of time, I'll entertain any questions you might have about it.
Motion to approve the revision to policy 5121.
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Larson, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gamble. Any discussion?
So there is new language though here on delayed entrance to 5-year-old kindergarten. Is that right?
Correct. Mhm.
So you does not recommend delaying the start.
Right. We are not recommending it. We're not making policy to
So
to
they must
prohibit it.
enroll their children at the age of when they're eligible. They
So
must.
that situation is when a parent has a 5-year-old and they don't want them to start
Right.
kindergarten, they want them in 4K. So essentially holding their child back. And we, from the research, know that that's not good for kids in most cases. So in order for that to occur, there would need to be a conference with that parent to ensure that there's a clear understanding of what the implications of that could be.
So they can delay them. It's parents' choice,
Well,
ultimately.
Ultimately, it's
It's a
parent
parent's
choice,
choice, that's
but
right.
we definitely want to have a conversation with them about that.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the revision to policy 5121, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then, last one is policy 4750, superintendent's evaluation. Dr. Miller?
Okay, this one should be easy, guys.
Nothing
Just-
in life is easy.
Just moved a
Or
couple
fair.
of dates to better align with our coherence plan and when we set goals and when we are going to come back and short cycle review those goals. So it's really just changing a couple of dates in the policy itself for better alignment with the coherence plan.
Looking for a motion to approve.
Wait, I'd like to be picky about this one.
Okay.
Second paragraph, the evaluation of the superintendent is the primary responsibility of the school board, who shall, run-on sentence. Is it the primary responsibility, or is it a primary responsibility?
I think what that means is it isn't anybody else's responsibility, it's the board's.
I think if you, see, I looked at it, it says this is the primary responsibility that we have. So everything else we're doing here is kind of just filling time.
And the way I look at it is, the evaluation of the superintendent is the primary responsibility of the school board and no one else.
No, I looked at it, it should be, is a primary responsibility of the school board, period. Stop the run-on sentence, and then
How about the school board shall evaluate the superintendent? And
you can do that too.
Ensure the procedures contain, run a sentence.
I'm not gonna hold up this whole thing, I'm just making this
I
recommendation.
kind of agree with you,
Yeah.
that it's,
I'll change it to A. So whoever makes the motion can include that there was an editorial change there.
You can fix the
And
run-on sentence.
I,
students.
yes.
Thank you.
Motion to approve the revised 4750 superintendent's evaluation as revised here.
Yes.
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Larson.
Second.
Second by Mr. Gamble. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Item E, board liaison reports. Are there any board liaison reports?
No, I'm not
No? Okay. Okay, now we're moving on to school community engagement visits. We have quite a few of those tonight, from what I understand. Who wants to go first?
okay, I can be brief. I was asked to be part of the Knowledge-a-thon event at Pleasant View. I got to ask questions of kindergartners, first graders, and second graders. And I might observe that, first of all, I thought I could just ask them their names, and I couldn't say some of their names, much less spell them. So I wasn't going to do that the next time around. And I was also very amazed at the furniture. There's no There's no desk, it's tables and these funky chairs all over the place. It has to sit on the floor with the first graders. Apparently, we sit on carpets. And some fascinating science questions about boulders and things of that nature. I thought that was kind of interesting. And that's it. They did ask me if I was a mom or a grandma. I thought, great, at least I could be the mom, not the grandma. And they were amazed I could guess their ages in second grade, that I could actually guess how old they were. Okay, sorry.
Mr. Gamble?
I did attend the Economic Development Commission's
Yeah.
awards banquet last Thursday. One of the big takeaways I got from it, from talking with different manufacturing reps, is the value of things like GPS and the way we're able to get kids into more of a workforce preparation mode. That's going to be very important.
There were a lot of people there, weren't there?
Oh, yes.
A lot of pictures I saw. A lot of puffing.
What?
Thank you. Mr. Nielsen couldn't be here, but he has a report that he asked me to read. He attended the craft fair put on by Forest Park Middle School on Saturday, the 10th. It was a fundraiser for the music program and featured musical performances throughout the day, Forest Park pop singers, FHS Orchestra, FHS Jazz, and the FHS Chamber, and show choirs performed. The FHS Woods 2 class with Mr., is it Betcher? Boyd Betcher? Betcher. Was a participant as a vendor selling creative craft items. Mr. Nielsen thought it was an excellent idea reaching out to fellow students, fostering engagement across classes and student organizations. Mr. Nielsen's wife, Wendy, and her sister were one of the vendors. Ms. Miracle, with her 8th grade music, was the 8th grade musical director, also had a booth, as she does every year, selling her candles and knickknacks. There was a raffle, a bake sale, and lunches and snacks that were sold. In total, there were 65 vendors who paid for booth space. The money raised went towards scholarships and other expenses for the music department. About 550 people were counted as the paid attendance. Overall, the fundraiser was a success, netting almost $5,000 for the music department. Also, on Sunday, Mr. Nielsen and his wife Wendy attended the cheer program fundraiser. It was a Packer and Pins gathering at Root River Bowling Center. They bowled from 2:30 to 4:30 and had multiple raffle prizes available, as well as a 50-50 raffle. It was well attended, so hopefully the program raised some good money. They begin their competition season after Thanksgiving. So that's Mr. Nielsen's. I also have, I do have one, I have a report, but I have a picture in there that I wanted to show you of a visit I made to Forest Park Middle School because we made some fishing lures. I visited with Mr. Adams at the 8th grade outdoor club. Students made 2 types of fishing lures with a process that included pouring lead to make a sinker, and then they painted the sinkers with a powdered paint, and then they adhered the paint to the sinkers with a heat gun, which was actually hotter than the molten lead that the kids used. And then they added finishing touches like a skirt to the lures. There were 2 different types of lures, and quite a few kids are in the outdoor club. There's a 7th grade one and an 8th grade one, and they're going to be doing some ice fishing later on, and he invited the entire board. If you ever want to go to an outdoor club, just let him know, and you're invited to go. I also attended the FHS Winter Sports Meeting after I volunteered with Volition. Prior to that meeting, Mr. Hine gave a presentation about putting academics first, relying on your teammates, and he included a portion of John Underwood's Life of an Athlete that focused on sleep and alcohol and drug misuse and health. And that winter sports meeting was really well attended, and there are quite a few new coaches. And then last week, the last week of October, I volunteered for portions of 3 days at Country Dale's Book Fair with Mrs. Gint, who's in the audience. She puts on a great book fair at Country Dale. She does that every year, so thank you for doing that at Country Dale. And then on November 9th, I attended the Student Senate Veterans Day breakfast. The FHS choir sang the national anthem, and the students made veteran decals at the school and spent a lot of time telling the veterans how to apply them to the car. And they held up a plexiglass sheet showing them how to put it on, but they said they'll have to have a drive-through at the school to have the veterans put them on, because the veterans could not understand how to do it. The student-led, it was a student-led program where they made letters for the veterans. They sat around the tables and had some great conversation with the veterans. The breakfast was put on by our FHS food service, and they even had to-go containers for the veterans to take food home. And then I brought my 95-year-old World War II paratrooper veteran father-in-law to the breakfast, so it was very nice.
How many guests?
Well, some of them had people with them. It looked like there were about 20 or so vets, and then their guests with them. And then I attended the Forest Park Paws meeting last night, and they were pretty proud of the fact that at the conferences they had a staff dinner. It was a dinner, correct, that they provided, yeah. And that seemed to be well received by the staff. And they're trying to reinvent themselves right now, especially with the anticipation of the 6th grade class coming over, ways to do some more fundraising. So that's my report. Mr. Alexandrovich.
I went to the Southwood Glen PTA meeting on the 12th, and it was a PTA meeting, a lot of dedicated moms putting in a lot of effort to help that school.
Dads?
There was one other gentleman there.
Pleasantville has like officers that are dads.
That's just crazy.
Country Dale, yeah, Country Dale's president is a stay-at-home mom, he calls himself.
And if I could just do a shout out for the high school play. I went to the play Saturday night, and it was really, really good. The kids did an amazing job. There's so many lines to learn, and they were spot on, and it was great. It was really good.
Yes, I do.
Yay, good.
I went and visited Mr. Volo at the high school last Friday, and we spent some time in his office talking educational philosophies. And then we went and toured the high school, and it was great to be there on the other side. And I said to Mr. Volo, you know, I'm going to have my 5th child walking out of the high school come June. And I said, and I've never been on this side of it. I've only gone in there as a parent, and I've not really gone in as a board member. So it was very interesting. Got to visit classes. The first class he walked me into randomly, all I heard was, "Hey, Debbie." My daughter was sitting in the back of that room, and some of her friends, and he said, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know she was in here." And that's okay. But we went and saw a lot of classes, and it was great, and I plan on going back again soon. And then I spent my Saturday also at the high school. I volunteered at the middle school wrestling tournament, and so that's their one fundraiser of the year, and so I worked at that for the day. It's nice.
Great. Mr. Volo gives a good tour.
Yes, he does. He really does.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. So if you look at G, you'll just see, I wanted to give an annual board goal update because January is our end of the semester, so there's a link there. I'll have this updated with everyone's items they gave me tonight by tomorrow night because I'm busy in the morning. So if you need to check, it looks like everyone here is up to date for the semester then. So good. So thank you. So then 10, I'm looking for a motion to enter into a closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.85 sub D to review district and building safety plans and school safety drills to consider the strategy for crime detection or prevention. Do I hear that motion? So moved. Motion by Mrs. Witkowski.
Second.
Second by Mr. Gamble. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, could I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Gamble,
Yes.
Ms. Evans,
Aye.
Mrs. Witkowski,
Aye.
Mrs. Larson,
Aye.
and I say yes.
Motion carries. We are in closed session at 8:49.